Okay, we'll see today about the phylum Porifera, Coelenterata, and Ctenophora. Okay, so we'll study in detail about all these phylums. Phylum Porifera. So this phylum Porifera, it is also called as the sponges. Remember, okay? So organisms in phylum Porifera, they are also known as the sponges. And if you see the habitat of this phylum Porifera, they live mostly in the marine habitat. You can take the example like cyclone, which is given in the NCERT. But not only in the marine condition, they also lives in the fresh water. So you can take the example spongula. And mostly these phylum, they show sedentary. What is meaning of sedentary? That means they are fixed to the surface. They cannot move. They are mostly fixed to surface. And coming to the symmetry, what kind of symmetry they show is asymmetry in nature. What is meaning of asymmetry? And level of organization, they will show the cellular level of organization. So remember, so they live in the marine habitat. Example, you can take the cyclone, and very few members will be found in the freshwater. Example, spongula, and they show mostly the sedentary. That means they are fixed to the surface. Coming to the symmetry, these are asymmetrical organisms. Okay, that means their body cavity cannot be cut into two equal halves through any plane. And the level of organization, they will show cellular level of organization. What do you mean by cellular level of organization?
Sir, the cells are not, they can be multicellular, but they are not arranged together to
Into
tissues.
the tissues. Okay. So coming to nutrition, so water enters through the pores, that is known as the ostia. So if you see here, they will be having a tiny pores from which the water enters. So those are called as the ostia. You can see here, this is the ostia, this is ostia, this is ostia. Okay. So if it is plural, we call it as ostia, and if it is singular, we call it as ostium, which is present in the body wall of the sponge. This is the body wall, and in that body wall, these ostia's tiny pores are present through which the water enters. So from the ostia, water enters the central cavity that is known as spongiocele. So this entire cavity, whatever the central space is there, this thing. So we call that as the spongiocele. And these spongiocele, they are lined up by cells known as the choanocytes. So you can see here, they are lined up with the cells. Those cells are called as choanocytes. What do these choanocytes will do? They will produce the water currents. Okay, so helps in capturing the food particles. So whatever the food particles, that food particles will enter with the water. So the food particles will dissolve in the water and enters into the body through ostia. So once it enters into the central cavity, which is called as the spongiocele, with the help of water currents, all these food particles will be captured. Okay, will be supplied to all the different cells. So see here, the food particles which is present in water, they are digested by special cells known as the amoebocytes. You can see here. So this is the amoebocytes. Finally, the water will leave through a big opening. That big opening is called as osculum. Understood? This entire thing you don't need to remember, but just know these organisms do contain a special type of system called the water canal system, through which the nutrition will be absorbed and digested. Okay, so how does this will happen? They absorb the water. Through that water, the food particles also enters, and the entry of this water happens with the help of ostia. So once the water enters through the ostia, it reaches to the central cavity that is known as spongiocele. These spongiocele cells are lined up. That's known as the choanocytes. Okay, so whatever this cavity is there, in that cavity, it is lined by a kind of cells. Those are known as choanocytes, which will produce the water currents. With the help of this water current, the food will be supplied to all these different cells, and it is digested by the amoebocytes. Finally, the water will exit through osculum. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the nutrition, they will be showing, okay, so it will happen with the help of water canal system. Especially there is a two structures that will contribute. One is the ostia, the other one is osculum. So what does this ostia do? This ostia will be helpful for exchange of gases. And this osculum will be helpful for elimination of waste. Remember, in the water canal system, mainly there are two things. One is the ostia and the other one is osculum. Ostia will be helpful for exchange of gases. Osculum will be helpful for elimination of waste. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And they also show the defense mechanism with the help of things called the spicules. Okay. So what are these spicules? These are a kind of elements which will do two functions. One is they will give the structural support. Second, they also helpful for defense. So defense against the predators. Okay. So defense against the predators. Understood? So they have a special kind of elements. Those elements will be helpful for providing the structural support and also helps in defense against the predators. Okay. So reproduction, they show both the asexual and sexual reproduction. Okay. So asexual reproduction will happen with the help of fragmentation. So can someone say what is meaning of fragmentation?
So the body, like for example, if there is a parent body will break into smaller segments, and through which a new offspring is produced.
Yeah. The body, whatever the parent body is there, it will break and each part will turn out to be a new organism. Each fragment will develop into a new individual. So that's called as fragmentation, which is kind of a sexual mode of reproduction. And they also shows the sexual reproduction. So when you see the sexual reproduction, we need to see whether they are unisexual organisms or bisexual organisms. Okay. So these organisms, they are hermaphrodites. What is meaning of hermaphrodites? They are hermaphrodites. So hermaphrodites means, remember, both the sexes will be present in same individual. Okay. So know this, hermaphrodite means both sexes present in same individual. Okay. So for suppose here, we know that eggs are produced by the female organs and the sperms are produced by the male organs. Here, the eggs and sperms will be produced by the same individual. Remember that. Okay. So eggs, sperms will be produced by same individual. So these egg and sperm, they will reproduce and will form the zygote. Okay. So that zygote will develop inside the body. And this fertilization, the fusion of the egg and sperm will happen inside the body. Remember that. So fertilization happens inside the body. Can you name what is meaning of fertilization happening inside the body? What do we call? What do we call this as? It is internal fertilization. Okay. If the fusion of male and female gamete happens outside the body, we call it as external fertilization. But if the same male and female gametes happening inside the body, we call it as internal fertilization. Is that clear? So the sponges will exhibit internal fertilization. Not only that, if if you see their development, it is indirect development. And what is indirect development? Presence of larva stage. Okay. So presence of larva stages. So what happens here? For suppose the embryo is there. The embryo will form a particular organism, that organism will finally turn into another organism. Okay, so this is the embryo, and this is the larva, and this is the adult form. If you see the adult form and the larva, they completely show difference. Okay, structurally. If you see the larva, it's completely in the different form compared to the adult form. So this complete variation in the young form and the old form, we call this as a indirect development. For suppose you see the example like frog, the embryo develops into a tadpole. The tadpole looks like somewhat fish-like structure, but then the adult form looks like the actual frog. And if you see the tadpole and the adult frog, they are completely different. So we call this kind of development as the indirect development. And if the embryo directly shows a structure that also looks like the adult form, then we call that as a direct development. For suppose you take as humans, after the baby birth, we almost looks like the adult form, right? There's no difference in the baby form and the adult form. So we show the direct development. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here sponges will exhibit the internal fertilization, and the development is the indirect development, that is presence of larva. Okay. And if you just know this, you don't need to, I mean, if this is not given in NCERT, but just know this. Okay. Few larvas were given in the NCERT, those you need to remember. Few were not given, just learn them. Okay. So there are two kinds of larvas will be formed. One is the parent chimella larva, and the other one is amphiblastula larva. Okay, so remember this. There are two different kinds of two larva stages are seen. So this is the first larva stage. This is the second larva stage. The first one, parenchymal larva, it is solid. Know this. It is completely solid. Whereas the amphiblastula larva, it is hollow. That means there is a space present inside their body. Understood? So they will be showing the two larva stages. One is the parenchymal larvae and the other one is the amphiblastula larvae. The parenchymal larvae will be showing the solid structure, whereas amphiblastula will show the hollow structure. And the development is indirect development, where larva stage is involved. Okay. And remember, this larva stage is a motile structure. And the adult one is immobile. So that's also very important thing you notice here. Okay, so here there is a larva stage is present, which is motile. Okay, and the adult form, if you see, it is non-motile, immobile. Notice this. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Next one. So that's the things you need to know about the phylum. Next one is the phylum Cnidaria. So this phylum Cnidaria is also called as the Coelenterata. Remember this. Okay, so phylum Cnidaria is also known as the phylum Coelenterata. So there are good examples are given. First one is the Adamsia. We call this as the sea anemone. These are the very important examples also mentioned in the NCERT. So first one is Adamsia sea anemone. Next one is Meandrina, which is also called as the brain coral, as it looks like the cerebrum. Looks like human brain. And the next one is the Physalia, which is also called as the Portuguese man of war. There is a submarine of the Portuguese warship. That warship almost looks like this one, this organism. So they named it as the Portuguese man of war. Just for understanding, I'm saying this. And the other one is the Hydra. Okay. So remember, Adamsia, sea anemone, Meandrina, brain coral, Physalia, Portuguese man of war, and Hydra. So all these organisms will be included in the phylum Cnidaria. Okay. So how do you characterize this phylum Cnidaria? So remember, this is very, very important. They have a nidoblast. Okay, so presence of nidoblast. That's how they got their name, the nidaria. Okay, so they have the presence of this nidoblast. So what is this nidoblast? It's a kind of structure which will be helpful for preying. Okay, so which will be helpful for capturing the organism. So that's why they got this name, the nidoblast. So this nidoblast is also called as the nidocytes. Remember, so there is a presence of nidoblast or nidocytes, so which are prey capturing structure. They are prey capturing structure. Okay, and these are carnivorous. Remember that. Okay, cnidarians are carnivorous. What is meaning of carnivorous? They will eat the other organisms. Okay, these are all non-vegetarians. They eat the other organisms, carnivorous. Okay, and that will be happened by a special cells. Those are stinging cells. So these stinging cells are nothing but these cnidocytes or cnidoblasts. Okay, or they are also called as the nematocytes. They have given different name: stinging cells, nematocytes, cnidoblasts, cnidocytes. All are same. Okay, so these stinging cells, they are also called as the nematocytes. Remember, so the word nidoblast or nidocyte or stinging cells or nematocytes, all meaning the same. So which are nothing but the prey capturing structure, which will be helpful for capturing the prey. So these stinging cells or nematocytes, they are present on tentacles. So they will be having tentacles. On these tentacles, these cells were present. So which will be helpful for capturing prey. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you can see here, Physalia, Portuguese man of war. So see here, the tentacles that contain the stinging cells, they are also called as cnidocytes. Inside each stinging cells, spiral filters called nematocysts are present. Okay, you don't need to know that much, just know they have this kind of cnidocytes, which will be helpful for capturing the prey. And the scientific name is Physalia physalis. Okay, so Physalia physalis, which is Portuguese man of war, or you can also call it as the blue bottle. And the next one is Meandrina, which is also called as the brain coral. You can see here, their corals. It almost looks like human's cerebrum, which is having several foldings. And Adam's here, sea anemone. You can see the Finding the Nemo structure. Okay, Finding the Nemo, that's a movie. They will show this fish and these Adams here will show symbiotic relationship. We'll see what is that. Okay, so these are different Adams here, sea anemones, which are fixed to the ocean floor. You can see here they are fixed to the ocean or to the rocks. So Hydra vulgaris. Okay, so these are the examples that NCERT has mentioned. So the stinging action of nidoblasts in the jellyfish. Okay, so remember nidoblasts, they contain a stinging capsule which is known as the nematocyst. And this nematocyst contain a very powerful toxic material, that is hypnotoxin, which will paralyze the organism. Okay, so when a prey approaches these cnidarians, the nidoblast will fire off and inject this hypnotoxin into that prey organism. Okay, so when it is injected into the prey organism, that organism now paralyzed. Okay, so that organism will paralyze. So it will create the paralyzed prey. So once the organism is paralyzed, they will pull into the mouth. They will take into the mouth. Not only that, okay, so one is capturing the prey is a main primary function. Apart from that, They also involve in the defense and anchoring. So they will be helpful for defense as well as anchorage. So you know what is meaning of anchorage, right? For suppose the ship is having a long chain that will be left into the water, so it will act like an anchor. Okay, so it will be helpful for holding onto a place. So for suppose the place is there, on that these organisms are living. So in order to hold into that place, these are anchors that, okay, they will give the support. So that's called the anchorage. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So coming to the habitat, these are aquatic animals. Okay. So they're mostly aquatic. And in that, mostly they are marine. They show the sessile or also free living. Okay. That means they can move or they can fix onto the place. Okay. They are sessile, not moving, fixed onto the place, or they can be free living. They can move from one place to other place. You can take the example, jellyfish is free living, sea pen is a sessile. It will be fixed onto the floor. Next one is symmetry. They will show from this what is the symmetry you can see. It's a radial symmetry. What is meaning of radial symmetry?
Divided into identical halves.
Body can be divided into two identical halves in any plane. That is very important. If it is only through one plane, we don't call it as a radial symmetry. What do we call?
Bilateral symmetry.
Yeah, we call it as a bilateral symmetry. But here we call it as a radial symmetry, as a body can be divided into two equal halves through any plane. Next one is the germ layer organization. So which level of organization do they see? Diploblastic. Okay, that means they do contain the two germ layers. One is the ectoderm layer and the endoderm layer. But in between the ectoderm layer and endoderm layer, they have a undifferentiated middle layer. The word is very, very important. There is an undifferentiated middle layer, which is known as the mesoclia. Okay. So these organisms will show the diploblastic nature. And level of organization, they will show the tissue level of organization. So before it's only multicellular. From here, the cells are organized into tissue. This is very important. So they will show tissue level of organization. Okay. So can someone define what is meaning of tissue?
So when group of cells come together they form a tissue. So
Yeah.
when a tissue is something that has specific functions, so many cells of the same size, shape, and origin, they come together form a tissue system.
Yes, yes, yes. So cells performing similar function, they are grouped into tissues. And these cells will be having same function, same structure, and same origin. They are identical to each other. Okay. But if you see here, it's up to tissue level. These tissues are not organized into organs. Remember this. Okay. And feeding and digestive system. So the digestive system or alimentary canal is incomplete. What do you mean by incomplete?
So they have only one opening.
Yeah. So these organisms, they have only one opening. That one opening, we call it as the hypostome. Okay. So just remember, they are having the single opening. That single opening, we call it as hypostome. Okay. So these hypostomes will bear the mouth. Remember. So this opening will bear the mouth. So what happens now? This mouth will open into the gastrovascular cavity. So you can see here, they open. So mouth, this is the mouth, let's say. So this mouth will open into the gastrovascular cavity, or this gastrovascular cavity is also called as the coelentron. So that's why they got the phylum name Coelenterata. Remember what is meaning of coelentron? So they have one opening, that's mouth. That opening opens into a cavity. That cavity is called gastrovascular cavity. Like how we have the stomach and small intestine, they have this gastrovascular cavity, which is called as coelenteron. Okay, so they got the name phylum Coelenterata because of this. And remember, this is an incomplete digestive system. And the digestion will happen both outside the cell as well as inside the cell. So that's why it will show intracellular and extracellular. Remember this. So digestion will happen inside the cell. We call it as intracellular. Digestion happens outside the cell, like in this cavity. We call it as extracellular digestion. So how does that will do? Okay, how does the digestion will happen? So remember the process of feeding and digestion, it can happen these steps. One is first they will capture the prey. Once they capture the prey, they will pull this prey into their body cavity. Okay, through the hypostome. So whatever the opening is there, through that opening, they will pull into the body cavity. Okay, so once from this mouth, the food will reach to the gastrovascular cavity. So food enters the gastrovascular cavity and the enzymes will be secreted into this gastrovascular cavity, and then the digestion will happen. Extracellular, intracellular digestion happens. So cells lining the cavity will absorb the nutrition. So whatever these cells are there here, so they will take all these and involve in the digestion. Okay, and whatever the waste is produced, again that waste is also excreted out through this opening itself, hypostome. So from that you can conclude that the mouth is itself acting like a, sorry, the opening itself acts like a mouth, and the opening itself also acts like a anus. Okay, so it will be helpful for both the function, taking the food and sending out the excreted waste. Okay, so that kind of digestion we call it as the indirect. Okay, sorry, we call it as incomplete digestion. Is that clear?
Yes.
So next one, body forms. They show the two kinds of body forms. One is the polyp, which is sessile and cylindrical. Sessile means they cannot move, and if you see their structure, they are cylindrical. Okay, and they also have the free living, which is mobile. It's an umbrella shaped. So remember, sessile or immobile. Or fixed. So all these comes under or non-free living. So the statements can be given through any way. So they can say sessile, they can say immobile, they can say fixed, they can say non-free living. So all these will be shown by the polyp, which is a cylindrical form. Whereas a medusa, it is the free living, or it is mobile, or it is non-fixed, or it is not free living. Okay, so all these comes under medusa. Is that clear? So immobile, mobile, fixed, non-fixed, non-free living, free living. So will be shown by the opposite forms. One is polyp and the medusa. There is another interesting thing is there. So that we call it as alteration of generations or metagenesis. Okay. So what happens here? Some cnidarians remain in one form. Okay. If you take one generation of the any cnidarian, so it will be either shows the polyp form or it will show the complete generation in the form of medusa. Okay, so one complete generation will be either the polyform or medusa for the entire life cycle.
Sir,
Other needed, yes, yes, yes.
Is Adamsia an example of a polyp?
What? I didn't get you.
No, is Adamsia an example of a polyp?
Yes, yes, yes.
And
It's an example for polyp.
okay, so that's like a type of mobility, polyp and medusa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just know this. Sometimes they can say the polyform, or they can also give the example like Adams here. They will say whether it's a sessile or free living. They will ask the questions like that.
Okay.
It's a sessile. Okay. So next one, some cnidarians remain in one form. So either the polyp or medusa form for their entire life cycle. Okay. But few will exhibit both the forms in their life cycle. Okay. So that's known as the metagenesis or alteration of generation. First, suppose you can see here. So what is meaning of this metagenesis is polyps, they will reproduce asexually. that happens by budding, and they will form a number of medusa. And this medusa will reproduce sexually, and they will give the polyps by production of the gametes. Okay, that means you can see here there is polyps, the parents are, and these polyps will give birth to the medusa form. Okay, and from polyp to medusa, the kind of reproduction is asexual. This is very, very important, which is actually by the budding. And if you see the medusa will form the polyp again. In the next generation, it will give the polyp. But here the reproduction is sexual. So where the gametes will be fused. So through gametic fusion, gametes involved. Okay. So see here, if it is polyp to medusa, we call it as asexual reproduction. If it is medusa to polyp, we call it as sexual reproduction. So this is called as the alteration of generation or metagenesis. That means in one stage it is polyp, in the other stage it is medusa, in the other stage it is polyp. Is that clear?
Yes.
1 second, guys. So have you understood what is meaning of metagenesis? Any doubts?
No doubt, sir.
No.
So this is very, very important. Polyps will give the medusa through asexual reproduction, and medusa gives the polyp through sexual reproduction. Okay, so this happens alternative generation. Okay, that means one stage it is polyp, the other stage it is medusa, again polyp, again medusa, again polyp, again medusa. Okay, so this kind we call it as the metagenesis. Okay, so polyp reproduces sexually by budding and forms a large number of medusa. Medusa reproduce sexually and forms large number of polyps. And this happens by gametic, okay, gamete production. And if you see the fertilization, so the fertilization is external fertilization. So what is meaning of external? So whatever the gametes are there, they will be released into the water. Okay, so they will be released into the water. Now the sperm and the egg will fuse in the water. Okay, so that we call it as the external fertilization. And development, it is an indirect development. That means there is a larva stage is present. Remember this. There is an indirect development, larva stage is present. And that larva, we call it as, remember the word, it's very, very important. We call it as the planula larva. It is a planula larva. Okay. So this is the most cnidarians will exhibit this form. So most cnidarians exhibit the larva, which is called as the planula larva. So you can see here. So this is the medusa form, which is a free living. So it can swim. So it will release the eggs, it will release the sperms into the water, and this sperm and egg will fuse and it will result in formation of fertilization, which is external fertilization. Now the larva form is produced, which is, what is the larva form called?
Planula.
Yeah, it is called as the planula larva form. Now polyps, okay, planula larva will develop. So larva settles on the ocean floor on the earth surface. So larva matures to polyp. Okay, so you can see here the larva is different shape and the final, whatever the polyp is formed, it is different shape. So we call it as the indirect development. Now a small part will bud off and polyps elongate and bud off, and that result in young jellyfish which will mature and form the medusa. So that's another generation. So see here, from medusa to polyp, from medusa to polyp, we call it as the sexual reproduction. So this is all sexual. And from polyp to the medusa, we call it as asexual reproduction. Is that clear? So this is the alteration of generation seen in the jellyfish. Remember this. It's seen in the jellyfish. And if you see the obelia, this is how it looks. So see here, the obelia colony which is fixed, and then it will produce the larva that will develop into the medusae, which is a free living, and that will again produce the zygote, blastula, and free living larva, and then it will fix and will form the polyp. Understood? So this is all polyps, and these polyps will give to the medusa form with the help of asexual. Whereas the medusa to polyp, it is sexual. Remember this. Is that clear? So this is an example for the obelia. Any doubt so far?
No, sir.
Okay, perfect. So next one, corals are made up of hundreds and thousands of individual coral polyps. So you can see here, okay, these are all corals, and these corals, it is nothing but a colony of the polyps. So you can see these are all coral polyps. So coral reefs underwater structure, it is made up of calcium carbonate which is secreted by the corals. So they will be secreting this calcium carbonate and it will become like a rigid stone. So that's how it looks like, the Great Barrier Reef, which is a large colony of these corals. That means all these corals, which is nothing but the polyps, which are settled on the floor, they will be forming this structure. And this structure looks like the stone, which is made up of the calcium carbonate, which are very visible from space. So from that, you can say they also exhibit the colonial form. So some cnidarians are like physalia come together and form a large colonies. Okay, remember physalia, colonial organism, which will show the large colonies. Jellyfish, it's a single organism. Physalia, it's a colonial. That means they will not live like an individual organism. They will, like all these organisms will form a single structure. That we call it as a colony. Here, physalia. And let's see the symbiotic relationship between the clownfish and sea anemone. I told you, no, there's a sea anemone and the clownfish will show the symbiotic relationship. Just know this is not very important, but just know this. Okay, so the clownfish and sea anemone will show the symbiotic relationship. First, suppose adaptation of the clownfish and the sea anemone, benefits to the clownfish, benefits to the sea anemone. First, the clownfish is protected by the thick mucus layer. As the clownfish grows, it mixes its own mucus layer with that of the anemone for the protection. So benefits for the clownfish is it will be having a safe home that protects it from the predators. Whereas for the sea anemone, the clownfish helps in cleaning of the sea anemone. Okay, so what does the symbiotic relationship seen between the clownfish and sea anemone is? Here the clownfish is getting protection, whereas the sea anemone, it gets the cleaning of the, okay, with the help of this clownfish, as it feeds on all the things that are there. So it scares away the predators fish such as the butterfly fish. It provides nutrition in the form of waste. Okay, that means whatever the waste that clownfish secretes, it is the food for the sea anemone. Difference between the porifera and cnidaria. Porifera, symmetry is absent. Cnidaria, sedentary is present. What kind of symmetry do we see?
Radial symmetry.
Yeah, it's a radial symmetry. So segmentation absent in both. Digestive system, there is no mouth and anus, whereas here there is a mouth is present, but anus is absent. Can you name the opening of the mouth? We call it as?
Hippostome.
Yeah, it is hippostome. Okay, so remember. So mouth is present, but anus is absent. And other features, it's a porous body attached to rocks, filter feeders. So what they do, they take the food from the dissolved water. That means all these organic matter will dissolve in the water. And they will take that. They will filter this organic matter from the water and they will digest that. So that's why they are called as a filter feeders. Whereas here they will be using the stinging cells, tentacles. They also release certain toxin that will paralyze the predator. Sorry, paralyze the prey. Is that clear?
Yes.
So next one, Ctenophora, the third phylum. Okay. So these are also, they exclusively live in the marine water. Remember, they are exclusively in the marine water. Remember, exclusively. That means they only live in the marine water, not in the fresh water. And we know if you go deep into the water, there will be completely dark. So you cannot see anything. So that's why they shows the bioluminescent. What is bioluminescent? It's nothing but the property of living organism that can emit their light, own light. That we call it as bioluminescent. And they show the radial symmetry. Remember, they will show the radial symmetry. So level of organization, still these are diploblastic organisms. So what are the layers that contains? Outer ectoderm, inner endoderm, undifferentiated middle layer, we call it as mesoglia. Okay, still they shows the diploblastic level of organization. And level of organization, it's a tissue level. Still organs are not formed, so tissue level of organization. Next one. So example, you can see here, pleurobrachia, tenoplana, these are all tissue level of organization. So comb planets. So these ctenophores, they have the 8 external rows, which are ciliated comb plates. You can see here. So there is a continuous external arrangement of the plates. So actually this appears like a comb, right? We use the comb for grooming the hair, right? So the same, the kind of appearance they are showing. So that's why they are called as ciliated comb plates. Understood? So that's how they also got the name Tina. Tina means comb in Greek. Hence the name Ctenophora. Is that clear? Ctenophora means comb plates. So what do we use? Why do the ciliated comb plates are needed? They will be helpful for locomotion. Used for locomotion. So that's why these organisms, they are also called as the comb jellies. Okay, so Ctenophora comb plates, they are also called as the comb jellies. So comb plates in pleurobrachia. So feeding and digestion, these are carnivores. That means they feed on the ctenophores and cnidarian jellies. Okay. Digestion, both extracellular and intracellular. That means it will happen inside the cell as well as outside the cell. And the digestive system is complete. What do you mean by complete digestive system?
They have two openings like mouth and
They have the two openings. One is the mouth, and there is a middle, the gut, which extends from the entire body. And finally, they have this anal opening, or you can say the anal pore. So where the removal of the waste will happen, removes waste. And we know the mouth will be helpful for taking the food. You can see here. So there's a mouth, there's a gut, and there is an anal pore. So we called it as the complete digestive system. So reproduction in ctenophores, they will show the sexual reproduction. So these organisms are hermaphrodites. What is meaning of hermaphrodites?
they have both sexes in their body.
Yes. What are hermaphrodites? sexes are not separate. Okay, so both the sexes are present in the same individual. The male and female both are present in the same individual. Remember, so male, female present in same individual. So we call it as the hermaphrodites. They show the external fertilization. What do you mean by external fertilization? So the egg and sperms, they will be released into the water. So fertilization happens in water. Egg and sperms will be released into the water, then they will fuse and result in formation of zygote. That happens in the water. So it's an external fertilization. And development, they show the indirect development. So indirect development means they have the larva stage. So what is that larva stage commonly seen in these ctenophores is we called it as a ctipid larva. Remember, it's a just know its word. It's a ctipid. Ctipid larva. So that's the most common larva that's seen in ctenophores. Most of the ctenophores. So let's compare between the coelentrates and ctenophores. Habitat, both marine and freshwater, whereas ctenophores, they exclusively marine water. Diversity, these organisms are highly diverse. That means you can see different range of organisms within the coelentrates. Whereas ctenophores, they are very less diverse. Body symmetry, it's a radial, both are radial. Specialized cells, these are cnidoblasts, so the word coelenterata. Whereas the presence of comb plates, which will be sticky cells, which will also helpful for capturing the prey, and not only that, they also shows the locomotion. Digestion, complete digestion in the ctenophores, whereas incomplete digestion in the coelentrates. So both are extracellular and intracellular. Bioluminescence in coelentrates, it's only shown by few organisms, but actually the bioluminescent is seen in the ctenophores. Remember, ctenophores are widely shows the bioluminescence. Very few organisms in the coelentrates, they shows this bioluminescence. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.